Waking up at the start of the end of the world, it's feeling just like every other morning before. And I wonder what my life is gonna mean if it's gone. The cars are moving like a half a mile an hour, and I started staring at the passengers waving goodbye. Could you tell me what was ever really special about me all this time? But I believe the world is burning to the ground. Oh well, I guess we're gonna find out. Let's see how far we've come. Let's see how far we've come. I believe it all is coming to the end. Oh well, I guess we're gonna pretend. Let's see how far we've come. Let's see how far we've come. I think it turned 10 o'clock, but I don't really know. And I can't remember caring for an hour or so. Started crying, but I couldn't help myself. I started running, but there's nowhere to run to. I sat down on the street, took a look at myself, said, where you going, boy? You know the world is headed for hell. Say your goodbyes if you got someone to say goodbye to. I believe the world is burning to the ground. Oh well, I guess we're gonna find out. Let's see how far we've come. Let's see how far we've come. I believe it all is coming to the end. Oh well, I guess we're gonna pretend. Let's see how far we've come. Let's see how far we've come. Let's see how far we've come. Let's see how far we've come.
Hey there, everyone. Thanks so much for that. Fred, welcome along to the 5 p.m. Liturgy. I'm Ben Collins. I will be your guide tonight. Liturgy means the work of the people. The idea is that it's not the job of a single priest at the front of the room or whoever gets to preach, but it's the way that we work out spiritual community together. That's been harder in COVID. We know that, no doubt, but it's doable. So thanks for coming to help us figure that out. Fred has been with us remotely. I am with you all remotely. You are with me and with Fred remotely, but we're here together. And next week, we will have the opportunity for those who would like to and feel safe to join us in person for the 5 p.m. liturgy. More on that soon. You can sign up for the weekly email on the Get Connected page at our website, wearecollectivechurch.com. If you are live with us, please feel free to chat with us on Facebook. Give us some shout outs. We do have our regular slate of events this week. Yoga will be Monday evening. Check out the Road Ohm Facebook page, and you can, hopefully we'll share that off of our Facebook page as well. Work of the People, our sermon crowdsourcing and planning group, where we talk through kind of themes and ideas and texts and questions to build the liturgy for the following Sunday. That'll be Tuesday at 4. Come along for that. The Zoom link and stuff are on Facebook. Thanks, Kenny. And Collective Cares is Thursday at 5:30. Dan will hopefully drop in some details in the Facebook chat now about that meeting. Kenny promised last week, by the way, thanks to Kenny and Fred for hosting for me last week for that time away. Kenny promised more news to come on what's happening in 2021, and we will get to that in just a minute. Whether you're joining us now live or later on, welcome. Whenever, wherever, your presence makes us who we are. Welcome.
We value highly the metaphor of journey.
We're different people from different places and backgrounds.
Representing a multi-generational community, and we travel different paths.
So we agree not to make assumptions about the person across from us,
next to us.
Or in conversation with us.
We challenge ourselves to be sensitive.
Knowing this community includes a diverse group of people
From lifelong followers of Jesus
To people who are just now open to the idea that God might exist.
We strive to avoid offense.
Ask good questions.
articulate and explain our responses.
We don't assume fluency in the Bible.
Spirituality or church language.
Because we believe the message of
Jesus is not for Christianity, but for humanity.
So we do everything in the spirit of love and grace.
We do everything in the spirit of love and grace.
In the spirit of love and grace.
Everything in the spirit of love
and grace.
So we do everything in the spirit of love and grace.
Wish upon you peace. I wish upon you grace. I wish for less of what you want and more of what you need. I wish upon you an old life with a heart that stays young. Most of all, I wish upon you love. I wish upon you truth when all you feel is doubt. I hope you know that an open mind still knows when to shut things out. I wish upon you a brave heart that will always rise above. But most of all, I wish upon you love. As the sun sets, well, the moon begins to rise. So even in the darkness, you'll find the light. You'll find the light. You'll find the light. Yes, even in the darkness, you'll find the light. I wish upon you an easy life. I wish upon you hard times. I hope you know that both joy and pain each need a moment to shine. I wish you ears that are quick to listen and slow to use that tongue. But most of all, I wish upon you love. As the sun sets, well, the moon begins to rise. So even in the darkness, you'll find the light. You'll find the light. You'll find the light. You'll find the light. Yes, even in the darkness, you'll find the light.
Thanks again, Fred. Tonight, as we look within in silent meditation, maybe our mantra is something to do with this light and this darkness and this unknowing. Even in the darkness, may we find the light. We'll sit in silence together for about 3 minutes. will the fool become wise? We're going to start at the end because it seems like we always try to start at the beginning, and we never seem to get to the end. I've false started at least 4 times in 10 years a series on the Sermon on the Mount from the Gospel of Matthew. This is sort of the best of Jesus, the cliff notes of his ministry, his ethics and vision, the essential Jesus, you might say. And we never get to the end. So tonight we're going to start there at the end. And it feels in many ways like we're there also as a church, a spiritual community, if you're not comfortable with the word church, school of love. It feels like we're kind of there also, right? Like some of you are sensing like, what's up? Is this thing happening or what? Is Collective going to go on? And we've started over, we've started over probably 4 or 5 times in about 8 years. And each time we start over at the beginning. And maybe tonight we need to also start not at another new beginning of Collective, but maybe at the end. And I know that's cryptic and compelling, and I hope you'll stay and see where this goes. We don't know. We don't know, which is a healthy, humble place to start. We don't know if this is exactly how it went down. But the official Jesus Gospel Matthew tour DVD, you might say, the record that we get in Matthew's story about Jesus is that Jesus gets up in front of this sellout crowd on a hillside in the Galilee region in the ancient Near East. And he says, and I'm going to tell you, this is my paraphrase. Give me a few minutes. I'm going to say it slow. If you're not familiar with the Sermon on the Mount, this could be pretty cool. If you are, maybe it's even cooler. So my paraphrase of now keep in mind, it's going to take a second. This is my paraphrase of the whole Sermon on the Mount. So let me wet my whistle. So Jesus gets up on this hillside and he says to this group of people, the people you think are blessed are not necessarily, and the ones you think are the worst off are sometimes the blessed ones. You can show the world your faith in such a way that people can experience God through your living. And it's not only about beliefs, but about practice. And sure, don't murder, but let's look deeper. Like before murder, maybe at your anger. Or like with adultery, let's not because we're better than that, but let's also get into our hearts and into our intentions and see where our behavior comes from. And like with divorce, the issue isn't that somebody broke a rule. The issue is with the relationship. We've got to learn to get behind the rules. Don't take vengeance. Love your enemies, not just your tribe. That's adolescent bullshit. Grow up. Shut up about your generosity so it can also be humility. That's the real gift. Don't perform when you pray. Don't perform when you practice. Don't fake spirituality to impress others. Be good without a broadcast. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Money makes surrender really hard, especially if you pretend money and spirituality are 2 different things. Worrying about things isn't helping. Try not to make things your God, but learn to find God in all things. Don't judge anyone outside of yourself. This way is a mirror, not only a lens. Ask, seek, and knock, for in asking is receiving. In seeking is finding. And in knocking is the door opened and the way made. Don't be surprised by loneliness on the way. If this way of love and of life were easy, everyone would be doing it. Watch out for false prophets in sheep's clothing. Not everyone with a Jesus fish on their car is living these values. Therefore, In light of all of this, about life in this way, what Jesus calls the kingdom of God, he says, therefore, and here's the end. Let's begin at the end tonight. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. And it fell with a great crash. When Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teachings because he taught as one who had authority and not as their teachers of the law. You know, I just now, as I was finishing reading this for the first time in my life, thought, I wonder if that last line should be because he taught as one who had not authority, but experience. Like maybe Jesus had been around a couple people whose houses had fallen down. Sometimes the only thing left in love is resurrection. And I'm aware I might be preaching Easter 3 months early. Sometimes something is so dead that the only way ahead is resurrection. Sometimes the only action left in love is to acknowledge that the house has been destroyed, and then to sit in the unknown of if and how we can rebuild it. To see if we'll learn our lessons and find some strong foundation, and then slowly, graciously, slowly, meaningfully, slowly, mercifully, slowly, gently, slowly, patiently, and also very slowly, we might learn that the work of resurrection is to begin rebuilding the house. And the gift of rebuilding is that it is the thing itself. It's not like, at the place we are coming through this transition and through COVID, it's not like we need to rebuild the church so that once we're done rebuilding, then we can have the church. We're rebuilding because in the rebuilding, in whatever form, that is the church. So what do we do with this compelling message? That was my paraphrase of it. Feel free to read it for yourself, Matthew 5-7. So what do we do? We've got this compelling message, this compelling way of life, sort of loosely formed but meaningly powerful community, a school of love. What do we do when we learn again that even schools of love, even these great communities, these organizations and institutions to which we are connected, in which and to which some of us have lived and given our lives, what we looked to as like a shining beacon of the way of love, what happens when even the thing we built ends up being just as messed up as all the rest? We're in this season of unknowing. And like everyone else in the world, we're very unique, okay? We're in a season of unknowing, 10 odd months into a pandemic, 2 and change years into a transition from this really amazing, vibrant start as a congregation. We're in a season of unknowing, and also let's look around the world, guys, because like everyone else in the world, we're very unique in our season of unknowing. You get what I'm saying? I mean, we thought, sure, and we have a unique experience. We do. I'm not trying to make light of that. We thought we understood. We really did. We thought we understood and had discerned the movement of God, a sacred leading, some positive spiritual consensus among many, many leaders, trusted leaders and advisors. whatever you want to call it, we got consensus from this community and from other stakeholders that it was right, that it was time for us to strike out on our own a couple years ago, and then it imploded a year early, and we were like out on the street. I mean, specifically, we were, thank God, at the table, thanks to the kindness of the Reeds and the table staff. But we're meeting at a restaurant. We bought a building that we couldn't afford. We didn't have money to finish the building to get in. We stalled on renovation. We started losing staff. Then we're losing interns and residents. Then we're losing supporters. Then we're losing more staff. Then we're losing community members and leaders. And then we're losing momentum. Then we're losing direction. And then we're losing vision. And then I'm losing inspiration. And then I'm scared. And that's no good for anybody. And I'm hearing from you guys, just in the last few weeks, I'm hearing from you guys, like, when are we reopening? And when are we meeting in person? When are we going to be in the building? And what's the plan for Collective's future? Like, what are we doing? And please hear me, as sincerely and compassionately as possible. If there was more to share, guys, we'd share. It's a season of such unknowing. We just don't know. All of our leaders are burnt out and seriously just surviving the last 2 years. But we're in the good company of every church who has ever existed to our knowledge, in that we've lived into this same pattern. We made something amazing, what we felt was once in a lifetime, genuinely unique, spiritually meaningful. And the Florida Conference of the United Methodist Church, one of the largest Christian denominations in the world, also said, we think this is significant and important, so much so that we're going to invest a bunch of money into it, a bunch of resources into it, and a bunch of energy into saying we think this is like one of the parts of the church of the future. We made something amazing. And then due to some forces within and many, many, many forces beyond our control, it all got messed up. Guys, that's what happens with churches. Is that a surprise to a group made up of human people who sort of pride themselves on being misfits and not religious? We built something great, and then shit happened, and it got messed up, and it's gotten more messed up this year. So what do we do when we can hear this compelling message? And whatever of that Sermon on the Mount paraphrase connected with you, or whatever you think you connect with of Jesus, what do we do when we hear this compelling message from Jesus about the way that we could live with one another? You build this place where we can definitely hear those words and celebrate them. It's just, we can't. I mean, I'll speak for myself. I just can't seem to get the practice to work out consistently. Like, we keep getting so close to building this life and building this community, and then watching it crumble and wash away, and then we rebuild and crumble and wash away. One of my favorite Netflix shows that I found in the pandemic, Netflix top 10 show called Deadly Games. Deadly Games, that's right, tell them you heard it in church. Deadly Games, so the one of the main characters, Earl Embry, he's a bomb tech, but in the show, he's the sage. He's Yoda, you know what I'm saying? He's the guide, he's the guru. So Earl says, there's a story about a fool who built his house on sand, big, beautiful house, right on the beach. Force storm blew the house right down. But his neighbor was a wise man, and he built a house too. But before he started building, he drilled down through the sand, and he anchored his foundation in bedrock. So when the storm passed, his house was still standing. Maybe bedrock means faith, substance, or truth. And the way Jesus tells it is two separate guys. Wise man, fool. But see, and in my version, I'd say I've been convinced by 20 years of ministry and 2 kids and a divorce, like 5 versions of a church that I've been trying to start for nearly 2 decades, and I still haven't quite gotten there. Wise man, fool. Maybe it's the same guy. The fool had to build that house on sand and have it come down on him. Maybe once or twice, maybe 4 or 5 times in 20 years, maybe his whole life. Before he built on bedrock. And here's the whole sermon. And he becomes wise. And whether or not you like parables, that's pretty much how it works. I mean, didn't we sort of learn this again this week? That this is how America works. This is how democracy works. This is how human society seems to work. That we build good things, even great, and very likely great intentions, noble desires, lofty pursuits. And in time, they seem to complexify and drift from their original goodness, you might say. The White House has faced many literal and metaphorical storms, and I think once was destroyed by fire, right, and rebuilt. I learned that in the movie White House Down. I'm sorry to my AP American History teacher, Jim McGinnis. But this week, the storm came in the form of storming the Capitol. A tsunami of cosplay, coup d'etat, racist power struggles, and cheap tyrannical theater aimed to bring down the house. It seems it held its foundations. And yet it also feels symbolically like we have to rebuild the whole damn country from scratch. And like with Collective, don't get me wrong, we've got some strong foundations. There's still some bedrock here. But it feels in the last 2 years like the storms have cleared the decks, and it's like we're rebuilding from scratch. And each week we come to an open table where we either literally in person or imagine together the breaking of bread and the sharing of a cup at an open table, where the bread and the cup symbolize the death of the sacred object. That is, the loss of the thing that promises us certainty, security, satisfaction, whether that's by the name God or America, capitalism or Donald Trump or Joe Biden. And whatever the sacred object is for Collective, right? For us, for you, for me, whether it's meeting in person or building a more robust presence online, whether it's people who have left coming back or people who have never come, finding out and arriving like the Field of Dreams just because we built it. That hasn't seemed to work so far, but yeah, no, I have those dreams too. We symbolize in the Eucharist, in the bread and the cup, we symbolize the death and the loss of this object, that version of the house, that arrangement of the way. We surrender it because that's both the path to freedom and the path to rebuilding the house. And that's the place, in the rebuilding of the house, that's the place where profound bonds form between communities who build together over time, schools of love. And so, yeah, maybe we're the fools and the church is the house, right? Between COVID and our transition to independence as a Methodist church, which just didn't happen, and the financial crisis that we're in as a result. Not to mention the spiritual, communal, social fallout of people that needed care and community and dialogue with intelligent and credible voices. And those people have not gotten our best. We know that. And we hope that you can forgive us as we work to do better. People have been hurt and they've been lonely. And the reason I know that is because I'm people, because I've been hurt and I've been lonely. So for you, as we start this new year, if it's time for you to go, or if it's time for you to take a break, if it's anything, this community is about love and wellness and you at your best. That's what we want. You loved, you well, you supported. And if that's not here, or that's not here right now, and it's time to go, or it's time to take a break, we get it. We get it. I get it. I want to lovingly and genuinely celebrate with people who can be honest enough about that need for space. And so I want to say it very clearly that I know that some of you need space from gathering with this community. Some of you need space from gathering with this community. And then others of you are like, what are you talking about space? All we've had is space. Let's get together. Let's do the thing. We can't get enough of this. Let's get more. We miss the body. We miss the gathering of the people. We want to get together safely. And so, yeah, there are people who need space from this community. There are also those who need space to gather with this community. And I want to be tonight both the pastor of this church and really compassionately honest with you guys. I need both in my life right now. I need some space from gathering with this community. For a long time, it was lots of us. It was so many creative partners. And over time, that group has gotten smaller. And then recently, it was down to like Jess and me and the shrinking board. And now it's just me and this really overworked, burned out board. And if I'm really honest, there's a lot of time where I feel like a fool who built a house on sand. And I feel like I don't have much credibility to say anything. I also need space to gather with this community because this is also my community. So not primarily in sermons and videos and art galleries, but phone calls and Zoom calls and bonfires and porch and carport coffees and meals and moments together in person and online for connection and relationship. And I'll acknowledge also that for most of you who are not in the nitty gritty, that for you, this probably just feels like a storm. Like it's kind of outside, it's loud and confusing, and maybe you find yourself like, I wonder what's going on. Is it over yet? It seems like we've lost power. And I think what we want you to hear us say is that we think that there's hope and that we can maybe light a candle, and at the very least, we know that you're not alone. We know that obviously in the world, but for us, for Collective right now, that this is a storm. Or maybe like hurricane season 2004, where it's like 4 massive hurricanes in a row. And it seems like it has taken this house down. Hold fast hope. Hold fast hope. That as surely as the sun rises, we will, all of us, get a chance to decide if and how we participate in rebuilding. Tonight, we're going to rest in the storm. We're going to take stock of the fact that the storms aren't over and that we will be, those of us who choose to, will be rebuilding in the midst of one of the worst storms our world has ever known. And that this is precisely why the world needs us. Let's rest in the storm this week and trust that we can begin to rebuild together next week. Join us for our liturgy next Sunday at 5. We'll gather in person safely for those who feel comfortable, as well as online, and we will begin together to rebuild again. We'll have lots of questions for one another, I'm sure. We'll try to engage in the spirit of the community statement as we start to unpack these things, and we won't expect and pressure ourselves or one another to have it all figured out next week. But we would love to know who's with us as we begin to rebuild. We'd love to see your faces We'd love to see your eyes in the room or on the Zoom. Worry not, friends. God is not to be finally apprehended in the house that stands or falls. God is the name of the rain that comes down, the streams that rise, the winds that blow and beat against our house, and in the perseverance to stand, and in the falling, and in the bedrock, and in the process of building, loving, losing, and rebuilding again. And if it is still my sacred vocation to say good news, let that good news be this: God is in the one who can become wise. I believe we as a church can become wise. Earl's version of Jesus' parable tells us that the fool can become wise. And that's why the sermon is this question: will the fool become wise? Our house has been blown down. We have to take stock. We have to decide who will rebuild, how we'll rebuild. But the big question is that, will we become wise? Will we take stock of our bedrock as we build again? The rain will come down, the streams will rise, the winds will blow, and they will beat against our house. The house that does not fall is one that's built on a foundation of rock. What is that bedrock? If we're going to rebuild, let's begin with that question. Amen. Our benediction tonight is from Henry Nouwen. The more I think about the human suffering in our world and my desire to offer a healing response, the more I realize how crucial it is not to allow myself to become paralyzed by feelings of helplessness and guilt. More important than ever is to be very faithful to my vocational, to do well the few things I am called to do, and to hold on to the joy and peace they bring me. I must resist the temptation to let the forces of darkness pull me into despair and make me one more of their many victims. Grace and peace. All right, let's bring our hands together as a symbol of our intention. First to our foreheads for clarity of thought, to our lips for clarity of speech, and to our hearts for clarity of action, so that in all that we say and do, love would be our first thought, our first word, and our first deed. Grace and peace.